It is my absolute distinct honor and privilege to be introducing the next keynote speaker, Dr. DeLacy Davis. He is a former police sergeant. He has served 20 years on the police force. He is an educator. He is a researcher. He's a community activist. He's currently serving as the executive director of the New Jersey Alliance of Family Support Organizations. He's also the executive director of the Family Support Organization of Union County. Dr. Davis is a true servant leader who inspires, he mentors, and he leads the charge towards fulfillment of the TCOM goals and principles. If this was a live event, DeLacy, sir, I would give you a hug. So I'm going to do this virtually, and it is a true honor. And everyone, please welcome Dr. DeLacy Davis.
Thank you, Ken. Can I be heard? Am I clear? Can you hear me well? Very good. Let me just jump right into it. I'm thankful and grateful for the opportunity to be here. I'm here with my staff and my colleagues and certainly folks from all over the country. And so I want to just go right into it. On the TCOM Tools website, we see that it says TCOM Tools are grounded in a philosophy of generating a shared vision to help people and their communities achieve wellness, goals, transformational collaborative outcomes management. It's an approach shared among thousands of professionals and advocates worldwide. For nearly 2 decades, the National TCOM Conference has provided a platform for the field to meet up, develop their skills, and share their knowledge. This year, experts and professionals throughout the field will gather to focus upon a theme of getting a leg up on TCOM. And so I pondered that for sure, and I wondered, what would that mean to me? In addition to that, I titled this talk this afternoon, Going Beyond Rhetoric, Transformational Collaborative Outcomes, the Intersectionality of Then, Now, and Tomorrow. And so I want to thank my creator from whom all my blessings flow, but I also would like to thank Dr. John Lyons for the invitation last year to participate in this conference with the TCOM family this year. I want to thank the Parade Foundation and staff, my friend, colleague, brother in the struggle for parent voice and choice, and this year's conference chair, Ken McGill. I absolutely want to thank my team at the Family Support Organization here in Union County, as well as my team at the New Jersey Alliance of Family Support Organizations. But more importantly, I want to thank the parents and caregivers and the children who've allowed me and my staff and my colleagues to be a part of their journeys. And I want to thank my birth child, Ayla Renee, who certainly has had to put up with me and all the children that have come along with me. My bonus children, and most importantly, my adopted children, who've helped me to become an expert on dealing with them. That's it. I'm just an expert on dealing with my children, changing for them, and helping them find their voices and getting a leg up for them. As I've introduced myself and been introduced, and let me just move my speed up a little bit because I'm trying to follow and keep an eye on everybody else and my time. I'm DeLacy Davis, and like all parents and children, I come with a story. And my story is a story of resilience, disappointment, shame, guilt, courage, police work, school principalship, researcher, caregiver, loving, hurting, and healing. I am a human who loves humanity. And now that you've gotten to know me, let's just explore. And again, going beyond rhetoric, transformational, collaborative outcomes, the intersectionality of then, now, and tomorrow. What I was really trying to get into in the title of my talk was going beyond rhetoric. How do we do more and talk less? I often say that we should have a moratorium on rhetoric because people talk a good game, but they don't do the work. You see, experts are often great at talking theory, but not so great as practitioners. That would be the parents and the caregivers in the room today. You are the experts. You know the children, you know the experiences, and what we hope is that people will take the assessments, they will take the data, and they will come up with the best case scenario and successful outcomes for your and my children. You see, we generally speaking, we know our children better than most people, but we need the expertise of caring, empathetic, compassionate providers so that we can safely share the information needed for accurate assessments of our circumstances that hopefully lead to success in care. I was pleased to hear from our colleagues in Tennessee and how they've implemented the cans and even finished with a video that captured all of that. Transformational collaborative outcomes. When we think of transformational collaborative outcomes, we're talking about imagining a transformation and a collaboration, but with the voice and the choice of parent and caregivers. We cannot, by any stretch of the imagination, talk about transforming any outcome in collaboration that does not include the voice and choice of families, caregivers, children. It just has to be a part of the equation. And then finally, the intersectionality of then, now, and tomorrow. What impact does the past and the present have on the future? You know, Proverbs 29:18 says, where there is no vision, the people perish. And so getting a leg up on transformational collaborative outcomes management takes a moment. And I'd like you to take a moment to ask yourself, what does getting a leg up mean to me? Now, some may say it means getting a head start, taking advantage of the opportunity to improve one's lot in life, building on an equal foundation that allows me to grow, prosper, and have equity, because I need two crates to stand on to see over the fence to watch the game that everyone else is seeing by standing on one crate. It may mean assisting a family in a way that creates more favorable outcomes because I was able to contain my own personal biases to see the uniqueness in that family's circumstances. So as you see or may imagine, a leg up on TCOM is about today, yesterday, here and now, but also tomorrow. It's about helping people to change their lived experiences in a way that is transformational, improves outcomes, and hopefully is sustainable. I thank all of you and each of you for this opportunity to come before you, to bring a parent's voice, to represent the voice of families, parents, those who feel locked out of the system, the voice of the voiceless, very often some of our children. Let's be clear. There are no two experiences that are exactly alike. None. But we're not a monolith, and I recognize that. But there are some recurring themes that emerge across all of the experiences that we're having that help service providers identify our strengths or areas of concern that indicate that we need support in a particular area, such as communication, spirituality, safety, education, those life domain areas. The CANS tools helps the service provider, the child, and the family to better understand these areas of strength, challenge, and how to use them to develop attainable goals and to improve our family's condition, circumstances, and future. Families today, especially our children, are living in a period of incredible and extraordinary change, challenge, and uncertainty. The Maasai people from South Kenya and northern Tanzania are considered a fierce and noble warrior tribe in East Africa. And it has been and remains the tradition of the Maasai to greet each other with the following words: Kasirian Ngera, which translates to, and how are the children? The reply to this greeting is the same, Kasirian Ngera, which implies that the children are well. More importantly, it speaks to the values and the high esteem that the Maasai place on the well-being of children. Even warriors without children are equally invested in the wellness and success of the children in the village. See, children in America and around the world, but particularly in the United States, have been locked in their homes away from school. Friends and loved ones for nearly 18 months in some communities have been locked behind closed doors. And yes, I know I use the word community, which for many people over the last 18 months has been an electronic neighborhood, featured on Zoom, WebEx, Google Classroom, Xbox if you're lucky, or other digital platforms, while intermittently drifting off to play a video game, text friends, shop for clothes, purchase in-app items without their parents' knowledge, or just plain sleeping on the job, right? During class time. As a parent of a bonus 12-year-old child, I was unprepared for the emails from the school. Your child has not logged in. Your child has not turned in the work by the allotted time. Your child does not have her screen on. Your child is not engaging the other students. Your child needs to participate more. Your child, your child, your child. That's added pressure on families and caregivers and parents who are also locked home, and some without the capacity or the ability to make money while they're home, yet the rent, the mortgage, and the bills are still due. See, I was unprepared as a co-parent. How about you? Who or what prepared you for this situation? The last pandemic like this was the influenza of 1918. I don't think any of us were around. How did they survive? So can you imagine the anxiety, the stress, confusion, cognitive dissonance that had to have been caused from a family who in 2019 was doing all right? And now the world that they had known has completely stopped. Remember, I said they were doing all right. And now the world, as they have known it, has completely stopped. Well, if you can imagine that, now imagine this, that families that were not all right in 2019 were even worse in 2020 and even worse in 2021. For the first time in my 8-year FSO career, the state of New Jersey allowed us to use our contract dollars to address food insecurity, which is a good thing. We were already mission drifting to help with homelessness prevention. And I'm not complaining, but now food insecurity, which I'm fine with. But isn't that the role of government, state agencies, philanthropic organizations, the haves to share with the have-nots? We didn't have much in our $588,000 budget, which supports a suite of offices, 10 staff, a host of volunteers, and 13 to 15 college interns. But like the olden days, as Grandma would say, the good old days, we shared what we did have. We loved on people of all ages, all races, all genders, sexual orientation, religious persuasion, political affiliation, and on and on and on. See, we didn't ask any of those questions when our staff said that people were hungry. We simply said, what can we do to help? We directed our staff to tell families that we would commit to identifying 20 families at a time that we would give $100 gift grocery cards to for 4 successive weeks. Families called crying with thanksgiving in their hearts. They were thanking us for the gift card. Some said I only needed the 3 weeks to get me over the hump. Some said give it to a less fortunate family. Some of the FSOs that I work with and support created drive-up food grocery lines that have boxes of food products simply placed in the car, no questions asked. Drive up and you get a box. Some of my colleagues rolled their leftover dollars from travel budget lines into food security budget lines. I advise my team of the following: feed as many people as we can, as much as we can, for as long as we can, while we can. You see, we know that food insecurity, hunger, and all the challenges that come with it adversely impact outcomes, even when providers have the best of intentions. There is a need for systemic change. Think about this. In the richest country in the world, children and families should not go to bed hungry. Women should not bear the brunt of system shutdowns, job closures, having to homeschool because they can't go to work, and they definitely should not be locked down in households with their abusers. There is a need for systemic changes on so many levels, or as Dr. John Lyons would say, we need systems that care. Did I mention that people of color need to be included in the decision-making process? Oh, absolutely. See, the tools are the work, they're not the individual. And as parents and caregivers and families, we're more than data points. We're glad to have the discussion at 35,000 feet. But as you heard from Tennessee at the end, we also need to have the discussion on the ground where the rubber meets the road. Whether it's the fans, cans, fast, answer, or other child adolescent assessment tools, the ability to successfully, honestly, and authentically engage children and families requires us to demand, create, and maintain systems that care about us, that care about our children, that care about outcomes that are meaningful to us and meet our goals and deliverables, not necessarily yours. How do we assess the impact of the pandemic with the co-occurrence of structural racism, of microaggressions, of police violence, mass incarceration, health disparities, and differential treatment in the judicial system? Because it has an effect on a family and its children. I must thank my colleague and Parent Roundtable facilitator, Janet Heckey, and the Parent Roundtable participants yesterday who shared their views on transformational collaborative outcomes. Earlier yesterday, we heard Dr. Kate Cordell express that, quote, people are people, end quote. And Dr. Lyons concurred when he said, quote, kids are the same in Singapore and Baltimore. What's different is the systems that serve them and the culture, end quote. And I agree. However, I want to share some of the thoughts of other parents who also realize that systems are different. And some of these systems do not treat families and children equally nor equitably. They're treated differently. Yesterday, some parents expressed, we have too much turmoil in some of our lives. I never thought about Black people who experience trauma and stress when their children are out driving a car. Or the LGBTQI students who are being bullied in school and my child wanting me as a parent to do something, but I first have to study and learn what it is before I can figure out what to do. So I'm constantly in a learning mode. Or learning to give ourselves grace and understanding and forgiveness that permits the parent who may not be engaged because we believe they're lacking engagement, but it may be the manifestation of hopelessness in a system that has not produced positive outcomes. Or the realization that hope is scary, vulnerable, and risky. Finally, the parent who says, my child is viewed through a lens of being Black first, everything else is secondary. And understanding that we are not the sum of our choices. You see, we parent out of our childhoods, and some of our childhoods were not great. We have generational curses with people, time, money, education, pregnancy, things that we still have yet to reconcile. So I want to first start with the first set of solutions. Say these are 5 goals that I ask you to consider embracing. 1, approach transformational collaborative outcomes as a reality more than a theory. 2, understand that tapping into people's strengths can be heavy lifting, but that is what is needed for sustainability. 3, build upon parents and caregivers' voices and choices even when you think you know better than us. I'm going to say that again. Build upon parents and caregivers' voices and choices even when you think you know better than us. Because we don't all start at the same point. We get on the bus at different places and get off at different places. 4, let's not continue to do things the same old way we've always done them because we've always done them. Even my colleagues in Tennessee said where they started with the CANS tools is very different where they are now with the CANS tools, which is progress and growth. And 5, figure out how to save this planet, ourselves, and our families. You see, some of us learned yesterday from Dr. Cordell that in 2019, suicide was the second leading cause of death among adolescents 12 to 17. Can you imagine what the impact will be from this pandemic? We have a short window to get all of this right. The CANS tools can help us do it. TCOM data reservoir, big data, can help us understand through reverse engineering how to make decisions for children and families that lead to more success in care, defining what success looks like in identifying patterns of success in care over time. But I ask you, when do adults learn how to define our feelings? or how to move through our feelings in a safe way. See, at the Family Support Organization of Union County, we approach these questions using social emotional learning, SEL. You may ask, what is SEL? It's the collaborative, according to the Collaborative for Academic and Social Emotional Learning, CASEL, it defines it as the process through which children and adults acquire and effectively apply the knowledge, attitudes, and skills necessary to understand and manage emotions, set and achieve positive goals, feel and show empathy for others, establish and maintain positive relationships, and make responsible decisions. While it's often associated with children to teach them how to be more emotionally mature, I think that there are adults who need it too, many of us. See, I believe that the world is tired of adults who are emotionally stunted, and mean. SEL is a safe way to enhance who we are as adults. So some solutions. During the summer, because children were locked in, our organization had a 6-week male mentoring program called Power Mondays Male Mentoring. And because of the pandemic, we converted to an outdoor drone program with a huge financial literacy component weaved throughout the curriculum. There was a guest speaker each week, and each year we've had a surprise celebrity guest who comes in via Zoom or FaceTime. In the past, we've had the honor of having TV Judge Mathis come on. We had Wesley Snipes, Vinnie Brown from Naughty by Nature, and 2 years ago we had Denzel Washington FaceTime with our young men for nearly an hour. And in fact, one young man who was very defiant, who did not want to be there and fought not to be there, said, never in my lifetime would I thought that Denzel Washington would care about me. And the fact that he FaceTimed with me directly, and what he did with all 15 young men, he FaceTimed with them individually and asked them what their goals were, what they wanted out of life, and what could we do in this program to help them get there. And then he gave a 20-minute presentation. So you see, we adjusted to an outdoor program to keep students safe, but also to keep them engaged. That's student engagement. That's family engagement. That's being creative. That's using the tools to effectively get to where they want to be without me defining what it should look like, but them helping us to define what it should look like collaboratively. You see, we had breakfast and lunch individually catered based on each child's dietary needs. So each week we send out the menu to the parent and the child, and it was 2 different restaurants for each meal. So this way they had some diversity. We brought in 2 drone companies to teach each young person how to fly a drone. We gauged their level of interest, and each received at least 1 drone or 2 to keep. Those that wanted to become drone pilots, we agreed to help them with their training, and we paid $150 for the drone license. One of my young men was extremely withdrawn. He had a haircut where his bangs dropped over his eyes and over his glasses. And as guest speakers came in and noticed, they would connect with him. And they would tell him that they used to be like him and wanted to hide from whatever was going on in their world. But in order to be successful and in order to climb ladders, you need to see the steps. And so we need you to pull your hair out of your eyes so we could take a look at you. And they stressed the importance of being seen, heard, and engaging the world around them. For several weeks, he said very little, but we continued to work to turn his light switch on. And he continued to show up. So we felt like we had a nice marriage right there. He didn't say much and he didn't do much, but he showed up and we showed up. And so one day I simply asked everyone to think about one exciting thing that they had done over the weekend. And he talked about building a tree fort. And I'm from the hood. I live in a concrete jungle. I have no idea what a tree fort is. So I asked him to explain to Dr. Davis, because I'm a little slow and a little old. And he began to lift his head up and move his hair out of his eyes and talk about the tree fort that he built. And then I asked him to come to the board and diagram it for us. We had a whiteboard we had rolled out. We had converted the parking lot in our space to a classroom. And I learned that on the continent of Africa. And so he came to the whiteboard and he began to draw the trees and draw the fort for us. And then as he got more comfortable, he showed us some pictures of the fort. And later he gave a presentation to the class on how to build the tree fort. Well, last week, he went to visit some friends at his previous school. And they examined the book bag that he was coming in with, and it activated the alarms. The student was detained and charged with possessing burglar tools and trespassing because he had the tree fort tools in his backpack. His parents called and asked if I would write a character letter for this young man, and my position was, no, I will appear in court if I can on behalf of this young man and fight for his freedom and challenge this system that is clearly unprepared to address his unique but precarious circumstances that he's in. The fact that we've been able to engage him in a way that helped us to understand his world is fuel for me, my staff, and our organization. It's helping us to fight for him and help the prosecutor and judge understand his world. George Floyd is another monumental shift for all of us in this country that has impacted young people, older people, and people of all ages. Whether you're supportive of law enforcement or not, anyone with a sense of humanity could not watch Mr. Floyd take his last breath under the knee of former Officer Derek Chauvin and not feel a sense of pain. I can tell you that we have received calls from corporations, nonprofits, schools, parents, and other community-facing organizations who want to have an open discussion safely about race in America, haves and have-nots, and they want to allow people to talk about it and process the pain of that event. But as I often say when I go in to do DEI training with folks, I said there are white folks in America who want to have a conversation. They just don't want to have to wear a helmet and shoulder pads and football gear to have that discussion. We've got to find a way to create a safe space to talk about it. While folks who don't wish to even consider what occurred will get hooked on phonics and talk about the aftermath of Mr. Floyd's death, the destruction, the protests, the societal response across the country and the world with demands for police reform and for some reallocation of police budgets towards social services like mental health care, homelessness prevention, suicide prevention, reduction of food deserts and food insecurities, as well as disparities in healthcare for people of color and the LGBTQI community and others. Interestingly, diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI, is another one of those acronyms that has become a buzzword. Some companies have $1,000 DEI statements and campaigns, but aren't doing anything, so it doesn't mean anything. Like this work, we need to talk more, talk less, and have more action, like action planning, another part of our work. It's not accidental that the state and the country are going from 911 to 988. You see, they've passed legislation that requires all states to stand up a 988 system for mental health crisis instead of calling 911. The hope is that families in my community do not have to throw the dice each time one of our children or loved one has a mental health crisis. We don't want to have to choose between letting our loved ones suffer by not dialing 911 or risking their death when the police arrive because they sent an officer with no mental health first aid training or no crisis intervention training, which heightens the risk of death for our loved ones. In New Jersey, we have mobile response and stabilization services, which ensures that a professional trained to deal with a young person experiencing a mental health crisis receives appropriate care from a trained professional, not the police. There is still work to be done, but we're here at TCOM so we can get renewed, invigorated, educated, and develop the capacity to build friendships, alliances, and better systems that care. In closing, I ask a few things. Please remember the goals. Approach TCOM as a reality more than a theory. Understanding that tapping into people's strengths can be heavy lifting, but it's what is needed for sustainability. Building upon parent and caregivers' voices and choices, even when you think you know better than us. Let's not continue to do the same old thing the same old way because we've always done it. Look at where we are now and what it's gotten us. And then figure out how to save the planet, ourselves, and our families. Now, I know we love challenges and we're in the era of challenges. So I'm going to finish here with a challenge and then take some questions or respond to the feedback. But here's the challenge. There's a need for systemic change. But Michael Jackson said, if you want to make the world a better place, take a look at yourself and make a change. And so I'm going to ask you, when you get a quiet moment, to one, list 10 people that you trust the most. List their names, their ages, their gender, their race, their sexual orientation. List their educational level. And then identify who you go to lunch with at work or at school. And then finally, identify who you do your business with. Now, I will submit, if all of your list looks the same, sounds the same, and acts the same, we cannot change the world until you and I make a change. Thank you.